It's probably going to be a long video. I don't care. Okay, so I keep reading these comments on Facebook. People complaining about the $21 minimum wage for fast food workers in California. First of all, California is one of the best places to do this. See, one of the problems by allowing states to control this is that a business can abandon a market that doesn't have policies they like. Basically, they throw a temper tantrum and they take their ball and they go home. And that ruins the tax base there and forces them to give the corporations what they want. That's why the only way to correctly do minimum wage is to raise the federal minimum wage, because then they don't have a choice. They can't just move to Texas. Now, sometimes this is a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. Like, for example, California tried to squeeze SpaceX or Tesla or one of Elon Musk's businesses. So he said, and went to Texas. Now, on the one hand, some of what California was trying to do made sense. Some of it didn't. But he got to vote with his feet and moved to a state where the rules were different. Now, there are some things where the rules should not be different, and wages are one of them. People need to have a living wage. If your business cannot afford to pay a living wage, then your business is not economically viable. You do not have a right to slavery to make your business viable. And underpaying people is slavery. That's not negotiable. It's not up for discussion. There is nothing you can say to me to change that, because that's reality. Underpaying someone is a form of slavery. No, it's not black people picking cotton on plantations. That's a different kind of slavery, but the end result is the same thing. You're enslaved. Now, before we talk about that, we need to talk about money, economics, and mathematics, because most of you people are just... Oh my God. We have this thing called inflation. And most people have no understanding of what inflation actually is and what inflation actually does. That's why this is going to be such a long video. It's a lot to explain because most of you are clueless. And it's not entirely your fault, because the media and the government promulgates these bullshit explanations that don't make any sense. Inflation does not affect the prices of goods. Inflation does not affect the price of wages. Inflation does not affect profit. That's not what inflation does. Inflation, and when I say prices, we're talking about the value, not the denomination. The denomination means nothing. I don't even have any money here. I'm so broke, I don't even have $1 in this house. The 20 on a $20 bill is not how much the bill is worth. It's the denomination. That's a fiat value that we invented out of thin air. The actual price, the actual value of that $20 bill is what can it buy? That's value. That's the price, okay? What can it buy? It can buy you this. It's a $20 mouse, okay? That is value. That's prices. That's what we're talking about when we say prices. The actual sticker price doesn't matter. If I raise the price of this 10% and I raise your wages 10%, did the value of this relative to your wage change? No. I'm going to create some crazy numbers here just to make this easy. Let's say you need to buy this, whatever it is. It's not a mouse, obviously. This is, you know what I mean. I'm using this as a metaphor, okay? Let's say this is $10 and your monthly wage is $20 and you have to buy one of these per month. How much of your wage does this consume? How much of your life does this consume? 50%. If I have 10% inflation, so I raise the price of this, you need it to survive, widget by 10%, and I raise the price of your wage by 10%, what have I done? Well, the price of this has stayed exactly the same. The price of your wage has stayed exactly the same. No one's paying more. Okay? Now, this is still 50% of your income. So, its value relative to your labor hasn't changed. But, I didn't get a wage increase. No shit. But that wasn't a result of inflation. That was a result of a pay cut from your boss. Inflation didn't cut your pay. Your boss cut your pay. If you and I agree that this metaphorical coin, because I don't have any coins, okay? If we agree that this coin, okay, is worth a hamburger, and you agree to give me the worth of a hamburger, not a hamburger, because you could always give me a piece of shit hamburger, okay? But you agree to give me the worth that we both agree on of a hamburger. Well, if your coins become worth less, you owe me more of them. Because ultimately, we don't agree on a dollar amount for our wage. We agree on a value for our wage. We don't think $20 an hour. We think half a tank of gas. We think dinner. We think a used tire or a fifth of a new tire. Okay, that's what we think about. We think about, okay, my rent is this much, and my car insurance is this much, and my electric is this much, and my food is this much, and the pay is this much. Okay, that works. We think in value. And we just use dollars as a placeholder for that value. So if the money is worth less, and your boss does not give you the same amount of money, he gives you the same denomination of money, but that money is worth less. So let's say the value of this gets cut in half. Well, you owe me two of them. Because we didn't agree to the value of this at half. We agreed to the value of this before it got reduced to half. So if this is now worth half, and we agreed that you owe me one of these per hour, then you owe me two of these per hour now. Because that would be like giving me $10 instead of $20. That's ultimately what it is. So when your pay does not go up with inflation, that's called a pay cut. But I'm getting the same dollar amount because we rejiggered what those numbers mean. Because those bills are worth less now. Prices aren't higher at the grocery store. In 1980, a Mustang was $30,000. Today, a Mustang is $30,000. In 1980, your typical house was like $140,000. Today, your typical house is still $140,000. Now, sure, there are exceptions. If you buy a larger house, well, houses you have to calculate based on square foot. So if you were buying a 1,200 square foot house before and a 1,400 square foot house now, well, you got an extra 200 square foot. You have to account for that. So that's why you see things listed as price per square foot. When you look at houses on a price per square foot basis and you ignore the outliers, meaning the houses in particularly popular cities, prices haven't actually changed that much. There's a bit of price gouging going on because of the way the interest in the markets work. It's not really price gouging, but it's still manipulation. Things are overvalued. But besides housing, healthcare, and education, besides those three outliers, almost everything you buy today costs the same or less than what it cost 45 years ago. A car costs what a car costs. Almost no change in value. Food is cheaper now. Substantially cheaper. There's this website you can go to called Inflation. Hang on. Let me get the actual website for you. Inflation calculator. Here it is. usinflationcalculator.com. Okay? usinflationcalculator.com. I'm using 1980 because that's an adult lifespan ago. And it's a year that a lot of data is available. So I typically use 1980. You can't compare years that are close because all of these number trends have noise where they go up and down. So it's like geology. You can't compare weather from last week to next week. That's not climate. That's just local weather. To actually look at climate, you got to look at hundreds, if not thousands of years and see where the trend is going. Same thing applies with inflation. You got to see the trend. So you got to be like at least 20 years apart. Anything less than that and you're getting into noise. Okay? So use 1980. You know, most of those Gen Xers were born around the time. I was born in 76. Okay? And you also have to try to avoid years where things are crazy, like 71, with the gas crisis and stuff like that, because that's going to cause big changes in those numbers that are going to violate the trend. And you'll see a couple years later, those numbers usually correct. So if you put in 1980 into the inflation calculator and you put $1 in, $1 today is worth $3.83 in 1983. In other words, if you had $1 in 1980, that would be worth $3.83 today. So when you have 100 pesos in your pocket and you get off the airplane, back in Miami, Florida, you can't use the pesos anymore. You have to convert the currency. The same thing applies with inflation. That's why it pisses me off that we don't teach basic economics anymore, because people don't understand this. I see stupid morons posting things like, "Oh, look at this, 29-cent per gallon gas price. Yeah, that's $3.18 today, and that's what we pay." So you were paying the same amount. In fact, most of the time it was more expensive. The gas is actually cheaper today than almost every year in the last 45 years. It's cheaper today when you adjust the numbers for inflation. When you don't adjust the numbers for inflation, it's like saying, I got 100 pesos in my pocket. I'm rich. That's $6, buddy. Okay? You can't hand over $6 for the McDonald's sandwich and expect to get the sandwich. They're going to say, no, this is not the right kind of money. And then you're going to find out suddenly that you're not getting as much money when you convert it. It's the same amount of money, different units, different denomination. So when you compare one year to another year, you have to do the same goddamn conversion, because you're not allowed to have $1980. Unless you got a Mad Hatter doctor with a flux capacitor and plutonium from some Libyans, you're shit out of luck, okay? You can't go back to 1980. So any prices you look at from the past, you have to use this website, usinflationcalculator.com, and you have to convert the currency. Just like you convert pesos to dollars, you have to convert dollars 1980 to dollars 2024. They're different money. It's different money. What did a Mustang cost in 1980? 7,000 some odd dollars. When you adjust that for inflation, it's $30,600. And what does a Mustang cost today? $30,900. The price of the car hasn't changed. Just the value of the money has changed. Your dollars are worth less. The only thing inflation affects, besides the value of the currency, because that's what inflation is the devaluing of the currency. It's not the increase in the price of the products. That happens because your money's worth less. Which also means the money your boss is paying you is worth less. And he's choosing not to pay you more. So when he raises his prices at the rate of inflation and does not raise your wage at the rate of inflation, he's giving you a pay cut and pocketing the difference as profit. Why do you think there are record profits from all these companies? Because they're raising their prices but not raising the wages, and you're paying for profit in their pocket. That's not capitalism. That's feudalism. You're serf, they're the lords. They own everything, you own nothing. This is not capitalism. If you want to see capitalism, look at Temu and AliExpress. That's capitalism. And what do you see there? Drive to the lowest price. Now, you also see criminals because there's no regulation. So you got people knocking people off. You even have people making knockoffs of knockoffs. Somebody makes this screwdriver and a person makes a cheaper knockoff of the screwdriver and tricks you into thinking it's the slightly less cheap screwdriver. That happens too. They copy each other. Yeah, that's like a wild, wild west capitalism. It's out of control. But that's capitalism. What we have here is feudalism. What, baby? My kitty cat. So you always, anytime you look at dollar values that cross years, you have to convert the currency for inflation. And suddenly you realize, wait a minute. Cars cost the same. Food is cheaper. A lot of things are cheaper. And most things are right around the same price or cheaper. With the exception of the three outliers, housing, education, and healthcare, with the exception of those three outliers, because they are just hard monopolies, with the exception of those, everything, almost everything, is either similar or cheaper than it was 45 years ago, 50 years ago, 70 years ago. But look how much things cost in 1950. And look how much your pay was in 1950. So you have to look at things relatively. How much was this relative to how much your pay was? How much today relative to your pay? Okay? That's what you have to look at. You have to adjust the numbers for inflation. And when you do that, you realize it's not the stuff getting more expensive. It's your pay being lowered. They're cutting your pay. Nationwide, we are paying people less than 50% of what we were paying people 45 years ago. And this is both nationwide and individually. McDonald's typical wage in 1980 was $19.03 an hour. That's $5 an hour adjusted for inflation to $24. Let me make sure that's actually still correct. Yeah, it's actually a little higher now. $19.14. So McDonald's typical, not their base starting wage, but their typical wage. I don't know if it's an average. It's hard to get this data. I found this from actual McDonald's documentation, SEC crap. But their typical wage, that's their wording, in 1980, so this is not including salaried people, this is wage earners, was $5 an hour, which is $19.14 an hour in our money. So you take the pesos from 1980 and you convert them to 2024 American dollars, and it's $19.14. So why can't they pay $19.14 today? That would not be a burden. That's exactly the same pay they were paying 45 years ago. Exactly the same pay. You were okay with them getting $5 an hour in 1980, but you're not okay with them getting $5 inflation adjusted today? That's because you're dumb. And that's not entirely your fault. Well, not so much dumb, ignorant. If you listen to this and then I expect you to do your own research and look this up yourself. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. Okay? Because you're not going to believe it unless you look it up. And if you still reject it, then you're dumb. Okay, that's dumb. Not knowing is not dumb. But finding out, confirming, and then rejecting it because you don't like it, or because some politician told you so, then you're dumb. Don't be dumb. I don't like when my viewers are dumb. So McDonald's was paying people $19.14 an hour in 1980, which means they can pay people $19.14 an hour today without any burden whatsoever, because they've raised their prices at 100 to 140% the rate of inflation, which means they can raise their wages at 100 to 140% the rate of inflation with zero financial burden. Because the change in price, not value, the change in price of the wage is accounted for with the change in price of the products. So if they're increasing their prices at greater than the rate of inflation while lowering their wages by over 50%, where's that money going? Look at their fucking profits. That's where it's going. Stock buybacks and C-level packages. Okay? Massive expansion. When you are paying slaves, and that's what they are, when you underpay people, that's slavery. When you start to enslave people, you can afford to open up a McDonald's on every fucking street corner. Why do you think there's so many fast food places? Because they're underpaying people by so much and keeping that as profit that they're able to spend that to open up more places and pay more slaves diddly shit to work there. So we have an overabundance of these fast food restaurants. And it's similar for many other things. Does that mean we allow them to keep the slaves because some of them are going to go out of business? They shouldn't have been in business to begin with. That never should have been allowed to happen. There's going to be collateral damage. Do you think these people are going to give up their billions of dollars and not fight back? There's going to be collateral damage. People are going to lose their homes. They're going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their income because they're going to throw a temper tantrum and try to cause so much damage to our economy, hoping the politicians will cry uncle and give in to their demands. This is also why state minimum wages don't work. California is one of the few places where they can actually make rules that work. It's one of the reasons why people hate California. Because California gets to enforce their will because they're the 5th largest GDP on planet Earth. Not the 5th largest GDP in the country, the 5th largest on Earth. If California were its own country, it would be the fifth largest GDP in the world. Business is not going to give up on that. They're not going to abandon California. They can't. It's too much money on the table. Unless we push hard enough, then they might try and see what happens. Because they'll do anything to keep their billions of dollars. But that's why you need a national minimum wage, which is why they've suppressed minimum wage for the last 20 years. Every year that minimum wage does not go up, it's going down. If the money is worth less, then it's going down. McDonald's national average wage today is $9 an hour. So they've reduced wages from $19.14 an hour 45 years ago to $9 an hour today. They've reduced their typical wage that they pay an employee by more than $10 over the last 45 years. Now you know why McDonald's can open so many McDonald's. Now you know why McDonald's is so profitable. Except they got greedy. They pushed too damn hard, and now people are revolting, and they're losing their customer base. I hope they die. Not death, but like corporate death. I hope they go bankrupt or suffer hugely. Does that mean people will also suffer? Yes. It's called war. There's no such thing as a bloodless war. You can't do it. All right? If you think that we should, that's like saying, give in to the bully, because if you resist, he's going to punch you. So that just means you just do what the bully says? Because you don't want to be punched? What kind of stupidity is this? That's the kind of mentality people are putting forth. I mean, I see this kind of crap all the time. Well, of course, it reset the page, so now I can't see the story that I was reading. But, they're saying, small businesses can't survive even one day with the new California minimum wage. Then you go out of business. Or if those businesses are important, then California needs to enact things to assist those businesses. That doesn't mean you exempt them from the law. That means you financially support the employees. So let me give you an idea of some things we can do to do this. And we have to be careful because our government is not exactly our friend. They're kind of the puppets of the corporations. And that's our job to hold the government accountable, and we don't do that. I mean, shit, we just voted Trump in again. People just don't care. Psychopathic, wacko criminal, and we voted him in again. And by a large margin. He didn't win by a sliver. He won by a decent amount. I mean, granted, the difference was a couple percentage points. Like he lost by 1.8% here. He won by 6.3% in Texas. So it's not like a landslide or anything like that. But he definitely won by a comfortable margin, which shows the stupidity of this country. I mean, if you voted for Biden, Kamala, or Trump, you're an idiot. Unless you're doing a tactical vote, because none of them are qualified as far as I'm concerned. They're all crooks or just incompetent. They're not stupid. You don't get to be president being stupid. Trump is not stupid. Okay, he ain't a dummy, but he is a criminal, and he is a wacko. You enact UBI. That's Universal Basic Income. Everyone gets it. And you pay for that with taxes. Now you have to be careful because UBI can also be used to enslave people. Do what your boss says or you'll go back on basic. You see that from some sci-fi shows, okay? So that could also be used to enslave people. So you got to be careful. That's a fine line to walk there. But what people don't understand is that the proper way to fix this is to enact a post-need society. Think Star Trek Utopia. But that can't exist. We don't have antimatter reactors and fusion reactors, and we don't have matter replicators or nanofabs. Until we have those 2 or 3 technologies, we can't have a post-need society. What we have is a labor economy. People have to actually build this, mine the plastic and resources, refine the petrochemicals, dig up the lithium, dig up the aluminum, dig up the copper. Somebody has to do that. And you also cannot automate, because if you automate, you enslave everybody. The only way you can automate is if you pass those savings onto the population. There has to be a balance there. Okay? Otherwise, your society collapses. There's 360 million people in this country. I love when I see people say, "Oh, we should all have farms in our yards and feed ourselves." We would all die. You need one perfectly arable acre of land with a perfect crop every year per human being. So you would need 360 million perfectly arable acres of land without a single blight or bad crop. Without industrialized farming, we're dead. It's that simple. Conventional farming cannot feed 360 million people. It can't. That doesn't mean you dump your farmers. You got to protect them too. But it also means you have to industrialize or people die. People don't seem to realize that since before World War II, since 1940, we've tripled the population of the country. Just shy of tripled. The population of the United States was 140 million people in 1940. It's 360 million people today. Okay? Do the math here, okay? Without industrialized production, we're screwed. People have no idea how much stuff we bring in from China and India and Vietnam and and South America and all these other countries and Mexico and stuff like that to feed this 360 million people. It's people are clueless. So what you do, if a business cuts employment in order to increase profits with automation, you tax them cost avoided. You fired $2 million worth of labor last year. Here's a $2 million tax bill. You saved nothing by firing those people. In fact, the more people you hire at the better wage, the lower the taxes should be. The tax system should encourage employers funneling more money into the economy via their employees. So the business paying their employees $25 an hour should have a better tax rate than the business paying their employees $20 an hour. Adjusting for the value of labor, of course. Just because you're paying, I'm talking about like if two otherwise identical businesses. Okay, obviously a paramedic should get paid more than a fast food worker, even though paramedics, you'd be surprised how often they make minimum wage. Yep, the guy going clear, zat, and saving your fucking life, yeah, he gets paid minimum wage. Not everywhere, but you'd be surprised. Okay. And people also fail to remember that minimum wage affects all wages. All wages are affected by minimum wage. Because we start at minimum wage and we scale up the rest of the wages from there. So when you move the bottom, you also move the top. Because if I'm making $20 an hour and you're making 15, and I raise you to 15, and I'm doing double the work, I'm going to say fuck you and go get one of those jobs for the same price at less work. So these wages will also go up to reflect that change, which is why they suppress minimum wage. That's why the attack is always on minimum wage. This also pits people against each other. Well, I'm getting $20 an hour. You don't deserve $20 an hour. You're a fucking idiot. Did it never dawn on you that you deserve more too? Now, that's a good question. What do you deserve? Okay? This is complicated, and a lot of people are going to disagree. I don't care. You're wrong. As a business, you are only supposed to have 3 choices when it comes to buying something. Let's say I need... I should have one. I always use this one description, but I don't have any handy. So I'm going to use another replacement metaphor, because I can't find it. Where the hell's all my shit? That's really annoying that I can't find it. Pretend this is a bottle cap. You're a soda company. You need bottle caps. You have 3 choices. You can buy the bottle caps from somebody. You can make the bottle caps yourself. Or you can do without bottle caps. Those are your 3 choices. So, what does do without bottle caps equate to? Well, I could serve fountain drinks. Now I don't need bottle caps. Okay, that's do without. I could make them myself. I can look into building a factory and manufacturing my own bottle caps. A lot of companies actually do that because they go through billions of bottle caps. So it's equitable to build a factory and make it yourself and cut out the middleman. Smaller companies, that's not equitable. That's a lot of money to build a factory. So you buy them. Now, when we say buy them, that doesn't mean you get to choose the price. You're not the one with the bottle caps. I'm the one with the bottle caps. I decide the price of the bottle caps because I make the bottle caps. If you don't like my price, make them yourself. Now, in a capitalist system with a free market, we'll have competition. And the value of the bottle cap, if it's a common thing that's open to competition, will self-regulate. If I get greedy and charge too much for my bottle caps, well, that opens up space for a competitor to come in and make bottle caps for less. And he'll steal all my business. That's why you see prices move. And in theory, in a free market that's capitalist, you're going to see a balance form between the number of people making bottle caps and the number of people buying bottle caps. This breaks down a little bit with niche markets. That's why you'll see handmade furniture sell for an awful lot of money. That's a very niche market. It can't be mass produced. It's difficult for a competitor to move into that market. How are you going to compete? How are you going to produce something like that? You're going to need to do the same manual labor they did because what they're paying for is not furniture. They're paying for the handmade aspect of the furniture. So we're talking about mass-produced things. Things like this. How many companies make mice? A lot. Okay? A lot of people make mice. So many people make these things that you can now buy these things for $5. Literally. You can go on AliExpress right now and buy one of these for $4.85. With USB-C cord and battery and light and bit. Okay? You could buy one of these in Walmart for $10.88. Okay? That's what happens when you have a healthy, competitive market. And that's why they're pushing back against Temu and AliExpress so much. It's not because they're avoiding tariffs. You shouldn't be paying tariffs. You're an individual buying something. You shouldn't be paying a tariff. That's what the de minimis is for. To avoid bullshit like trying to charge individuals tariffs for buying a $5 screwdriver. Okay? But Walmart and Amazon don't like it because they're buying the same screwdriver for $2 and selling it to you for $10 or $20. And they want you to buy that same screwdriver from them. They don't want you to bypass their profit margin and buy it direct. That's why they have Trump going after tariffs. Not because Temu is avoiding taxes. They don't pay the tax. You do. That's not their responsibility. That's yours. What they don't like is that Temu is allowing individuals who are hurting and suffering right now to bypass their inflated profit margins and buy the exact same product. Do you really think this is not precisely, exactly the same product that Walmart is selling for $10.88? It's not a similar product. It's the same gadget from the same factory line. But you have to pay Walmart's profit margin. Okay? That's why they're going after them. Okay? Don't believe any other bullshit. That's exactly why they're going after them. Their objective is not to make them pay their fair share. Their objective is to put them out of business so that you have no choice but to buy it from Walmart or Amazon. The same exact thing for 5 times the price. Okay? Trust me, I've seen it. I have a pair of earrings that I bought. I paid 33 cents for them. They're for sale on Amazon for $26.41. They're not similar. They're the same earrings. They paid 33 cents for them from China, and they've marked it up to $26.41. Okay? I'm not talking about the counterfeit products. If you buy a pair of $9 Apple AirPods, you're a moron. Because that's just not how that works. You know they're not real. You're stupid if you convince yourself they are. Or you're okay with a fake, but it looks like it's real because you want to show off to people. That's a possibility too. So I choose the price of bottle caps, and a healthy market will keep the price balanced between profit and price. If you have a monopoly, you have what's called first mover status. That's why you'll sometimes see they had these hair bands that had little deer ears and antlers with little LED lights on them. They're really cute. I like them. I wanted to get a set because they're cute, and but they were like $12, $15. sometimes $20. I was like, they're not worth that. I know they're worth less than that. Not from China. That's the kind of price I expect to see on Amazon. They're selling for like 30 on Amazon, and they were still selling these $2-3 widgets for 12-15 bucks on AliExpress because there was high demand. Demand was outstripping supply. In fact, most of those sites selling them for 15 bucks, you couldn't even buy them for $15 because that version was always out of stock. Now demand has dropped, the market has balanced between supply and demand. Now you can buy them for $3. That's where they should be. $3 to $5. But that's how that works. Okay, so we're not talking about that. Now, if I get greedy, you'll open up your own factory, or a competitor will see potential money being left on the table, and he'll move in to compete with me. What you can't do is force me to sell you my bottle caps for the price you want. Okay, so these bottle caps have a minimum cost. That minimum cost is my cost to get to the point where I'm handing it to you. Anything over that is profit. So let's say I'm selling bottle caps for 10 cents and my cost is a nickel. Well, we can negotiate between a nickel and 10 cents. I'm not going to give it to you for a nickel because then I'm not making any money. And, and you don't want to pay a dime. So you might say, okay, I'll buy 2 million bottle caps. Okay, I'll give them to you for 8 cents for that. How about 5 million bottle caps? I'll give them to you for 7 cents. How do I get to a nickel? You don't, because that's my price. That's my cost. So you don't. The only way you're getting a nickel is if you do it yourself. So you're going to spend the money to build a factory, and you're just going to end up paying a nickel anyway, plus the cost of building the factory. So you can't, okay, unless I'm overcharging. Then obviously you can either make them yourself or a competitor will move in. Minimum wage, the way it's being done today, the purpose of minimum wage was to make sure one person working full-time could make a livable income for their family. Not a luxurious income. I love how people think, you want lobster and caviar every day. First of all, lobster used to be garbage food. It used to be crap they would feed to prisoners because it rolled up on the beaches and nobody wanted to eat it. So it used to be garbage food, but that's beside the point. The base cost of the product is a nickel. I'm selling it for a dime. Depending on how many you buy, we can negotiate. Labor is a product you don't own. The laborer owns the labor. You want my labor, you should pay my cost plus a profit, even if it's a tiny profit. What is the base cost of labor? That's a hard one. I mean, it's easy to figure out the base cost of this. I take the wages, taxes, utilities, electricity, materials, transport, shipping, marketing, my own salary, and I factor all that in and I divide it by the number I make per year, and there you go. I have a nickel each. So it's pretty easy to figure out what that costs. Labor is a little harder because it's a little bit more subjective and ethereal. So, what is the base cost of labor? I've actually done the math. I actually have the numbers. These numbers are 1.5 years old, so they're a bit higher today, but I have actually done the numbers. Let me find the page. Is it there? Is it here? Here we go. Here's the numbers. These are all the numbers for a basic minimum wage. Not a minimum wage. That's supposed to be a living wage. A minimum wage should be about $27 an hour today. $27 to $30 an hour, depending on where you live. But that's a pipe dream. Okay. How about we talk about survival wage? A survival wage is a person not in poverty. Poverty is defined as the inability to pay your basic cost of living. That's how we're defining poverty. About 60% of the country is under the poverty line. How is that possible? Because we have cheat codes. Okay? So you have welfare, you have benefits. You can choose not to pay for your car insurance. You could get a roommate to lower your living costs. You can do without health insurance. Okay? These are cheat codes. A cheat code is supposed to benefit you, not permit your employer to pay you less. Let me give you an example of this. You're driving an F-150 Ford pickup truck, not one of these new $70,000 trucks. A 2002 Ford pickup truck. Okay, a $5,000 truck. You're driving around this Ford pickup truck and you realize, well, I could buy that used Toyota Prius and I could cut my gas bill to a third of what I'm paying now. So you bite the bullet, and let's say you even keep the pickup truck in case you ever need a truck. Your insurance is pretty cheap. So you buy the used Prius, and you show up to work one day with the Prius, and the boss goes, "Oh, nice car. You get like 50 miles to the gallon, that right?" Like, yep, saving me a lot of money on gas. Okay, I'm lowering your wage $2 an hour. What do you mean you're lowering my wage $2 an hour? Well, you don't need as much money now. You're saving money on gas. That's my savings, not yours. Fuck you. And that's exactly what you would say if a boss tried to do that. So why are you okay with us building that into the employment agreement? Employees say, well, you can eat less food. You can, go out less. You could get a roommate. Yeah, but those are supposed to benefit me, not permit you to pay me less. So minimum survival wage, not living wage, survival wage, is the amount of money one single person needs to pay for your basic cost of living. And I do mean basic. You will live a miserable life, but you'll survive. And I'm even going to allow a couple of cheat codes, because otherwise, no cheat codes. You have to pay for all of this with your income. Nothing else. You're not allowed to use any welfare services, because that means you're below the poverty line. So, you have rent. You have healthcare, food, phone, utilities, car insurance, maintenance, fuel, basics, entertainment, luxuries, eating out, DMV, just another form of taxes, TV, home, internet, and what is this one? Streaming services, gaming services, all of this stuff I have listed here. Now, how do we know what these things are worth? You have to use an average. You can't go on Facebook. I'm trying to find a phone to pick up to show you. You can't go on Facebook Marketplace and say, see, I found a room for rent for $600. How many? 5? 60% of the country is under the poverty line. So let's use 50%. Median per capita income in the country is less than $38,000 a year. That's well under the poverty line. You can't survive on $38,000 a year without massive cheat codes. Massive cheat codes. So we know it's at least 50%, which means whatever price you give me must be available to 50% of the population in your area. My town has 6,000 people in it. So whatever price I use has to be a price that would apply to 3,000 people. If 3,000 people right now put their hand up and said, I need an apartment, whatever the average price those people are going to get, that's what you have to use. Now this number, remember, this number is almost 2 years old. I didn't put a date on this, but I'm pretty sure this was beginning of 2023. So this is 2 years ago. So these numbers are a lot higher today. Okay, you'll see when I read these numbers, you'll see what I mean. Rent, average rent is $1,098. It's actually more like $1,400 now, but I'm gonna stick with the numbers I have because I figured out the math. Rent, $1,098. Healthcare, this one I call bullshit on, but it's what came up in Google, so I have to use it. It says healthcare, $456. I don't know where you're getting healthcare for $456. I can't think of any place where you can get healthcare that cheap. I mean, maybe the ACA marketplace if you never use it. You can get healthcare for like $250, $300 sometimes if you're low enough income, but that's only if you never use it, because that only covers 70 or 80%. You have to pay the rest. But that's what Google came up with, so that's what I'm going to use. Basically, this number should be a lot larger, but we're going to use it. $456. Food, $300. You are not going to eat well on $300. Now, if you live in the farming belt and you have access to very local farmers markets where you can get very cheap food, you might be able to live healthy on $300. So you're not going to live well, but you'll survive. $300. Phone, $25. You buy a prepaid, MVNO, dirt cheap plan. You buy your phone. You cannot exist without a digital footprint today. Remember, we're talking about the bulk, 50% of the population. Just because you found 10 people who can doesn't apply. We have to apply averages. I'm trying to help the 80 million people who live below median per capita income, not the one person. I don't care about the one person because that doesn't fix anything. Phone, $25. Utilities. This is heat, probably no air conditioning, but heat, water, electricity, trash, etc. $200. That's a very, very conservative price, but it's doable if you live below like the 38th median or parallel. Is it the bottom half of the country, the warmer half of the country? If you live in the northern half, that's closer to $400. All right, but we're going to assume that you're poor, so you move south where it's cheaper. Why do you think places like Louisiana and Alabama, South Carolina, why do you think they have such a huge poor population? Because that's where poor go, because it's cheaper. All right, warmer climate is cheaper. Heat is expensive. So $200 a month for utilities. Car insurance, $150. Remember, we're talking about somebody who just turned 18. They're moving out of their home. They're living on their own. That's actually a give me. I'm giving you a free pass there because most people 18 to 25 are not getting $150 a month car insurance. But let's go with it. That's the average, $150. Maintenance, $42. This is how much money you have to put aside each month to be able to repair the brakes when they go bad, replace a tire when it goes bad, stuff like that. Okay. Fuel, $146. Remember, this is 2 years old. This is based on the national average of 14,263 miles a year, and the national average of 24.5 miles per gallon, and the national average fuel price at the time 2 years ago, $146. Basics. This is things like buying a t-shirt, buying toilet paper, paper towels, buying laundry detergent, toothpaste, toothbrush, basics, $50 a month. And you're not going to spend $50 every month, but like, you got to replace a pair of shoes, that's going to be like $30, $40 for anything that's not absolute total styrofoam garbage. And so you amortize it over the year. You take the total yearly expenses you expect to spend, so in this case, $600 a year, and you divide it by 12. That's how you come up with that. I have to actually go to this and cancel it. Otherwise, it's going to keep on ringing for like minutes. Oh, that's so annoying. I hate that. It doesn't pop up a notification. You have to actually go drill down your menus, find Messenger, hit the green bar, and then you can hit it to cancel or answer. Oh, it's a pain in the ass. So, okay, let's go to the rest here. DMV, $13. Again, we're assuming you're going to move to a state where you're not paying property tax on your car. And so, like in my state, registration is like $65 for 2 years, and the license is like $47 for 8 years. So you take these costs and you amortize them on a per month basis. Comes out to an average of about $13 a month. If you were to move to, for example, Arizona, that's going to be higher because Arizona charges property tax on cars. So your DMV costs are going to be much higher. So you're not going to that state, and you're not living in California. So let's talk about the other things I talked about. How much for entertainment? $0. How much for luxuries? $0. How much for eating out? We're talking McDonald's, pizza, Chinese, restaurants, anything. $0. How much for television? $0. How much for, what's this one? Home internet. Nah, you're not making enough money. This is survival wage, buddy. $0. You get whatever entertainment you get on the $25 a month prepaid phone. So you're going to have to go get yourself an HDMI cable to connect that phone, or a Chromecast, since you can't afford. You're going to have to hope somebody gives you a Chromecast so that you can take content on your phone and send it to that. Actually, that won't work. You need home internet. So you need the $10 HDMI cable for your phone. Streaming services, gaming services, think Hulu or Xbox. $0. You don't get any of that. How about going out to the movies? Not unless someone else is driving you and someone else is paying. You're your guest and they're paying for everything, then you can go to the movies. Otherwise, there's free movies on YouTube. Use that. You want to order pizza? No, too expensive. Not unless you can build it into your $300 food budget. Okay? You're getting no luxuries. You can't even use your car to go somewhere that's free unless it's very local. Otherwise, it's going to impact your fuel budget, which you don't have enough for. Okay? So how much does that come to? That is $29,760. But you have to pay taxes. So to actually earn enough money to end up with $29,760 after taxes so that you can pay for that pitiful Spartan existence that I just described to you, you need to make $37,200. So basically, minimum survival wage is median. This is just shy of median. Median is like $37,680 or something like that. So you're basically median. And keep in mind, these are 2 years old. These prices are higher now. Food is more like $350. Rent is more like $1,400-1,500. Okay? And again, this assumes you live in the middle of nowhere, outside of a city, in the south half of the country. You want to live in Houston or Philadelphia or Boston? You want to live anywhere in California? No, this number's a lot bigger. Okay? That means you need to make $21 an hour. For this shit existence of a life that I just described to you. For this absolute garbage, you sit in your home and you keep the lights off to save on your electric bill, and you sit there on your phone, and you either use your pitiful data connection or you steal your neighbor's Wi-Fi to watch a movie on YouTube for free. Okay? Because that's all you can afford. $21 an hour. There is no place in the country with a minimum wage that's survivable. No place. No city. None. None of them have a survivable minimum wage. None. You think you can do better? Here, get a screenshot of that. Okay? You find me an example less than this. You must pay rent, health insurance, food, phone, utilities, car insurance, maintenance, fuel, and basics, and your DMV taxes. You must pay for all of that. You're not allowed to cut any of that out because that's a cheat code. Okay, that's the minimum to survive in today's society. If you don't have health insurance, you're a burden on society when they have to take care of you and you can't pay for it. You don't have car insurance, tell that to the family you hit. Okay? That's your minimum. You must have these things. And you're not allowed to use any cheat codes. So you can't say, well, I'll get a roommate to cut my rent in half. No, because that's supposed to benefit you, not permit your employer to pay you less. That's like your employer seeing you drive up with a $3,000 used Prius and saying, okay, you don't need as much gas, so I'm lowering your pay $2 an hour. Now, if your employer offers health care, you factor in the value of that health care into the wage. Okay, so that, when I tell people that people in Europe are getting paid $30 an hour, it's like, well, no, the minimum wage is 21. Yeah, but they also get free health care, free pension, free paid time off, free medical, free education. You have to factor in the value of that. That's why it comes to an average of about 30. By the way, McDonald's can pay people $27 an hour in some of the first world European countries, and the Big Mac is cheaper than it is here. I'm not making this up. You can go look it up. It's called the Big Mac Index. Check it out. It'll blow your mind. Somehow they're profitable. Somehow. It's magic. And they pay higher taxes too. But somehow it's profitable. So that means that even if you eliminated healthcare, for example, if the United States instituted national healthcare, your minimum survival wage 2 years ago is still $19 an hour. In which case, California fast food workers, and I believe New York City fast food workers, would be the only ones making the survival wage. And, of course, that wage is nowhere close to survival in those two locations. So you would have to somehow commute from North Carolina to New York. Well, I'll buy a house. Well, where are you getting the money? You're 18 years old. You're just leaving your mom's house. I am permitting you a couple of cheat codes. One, I'm assuming you start off with a decent phone. That you bought that while you were living with your parents. I'm also assuming you already have a decent, good working car that doesn't need any major repairs. Again, you got that while living with your parents. So when you move out of your home at 18 or 20, and you now have to buy an apartment, because you can't buy a house, All right, and you have to buy an apartment. You have to pay for all of this. But I'm assuming you have a car that's not going to need any major repairs. I'm assuming you're not going to have any major sicknesses. And I'm assuming your phone's not going to fail. So I'm giving you those cheat codes. Those are pretty big cheat codes. One major health crisis, one major auto repair, and this whole budget goes right out the window. You better hope that car lasts 40 years because there's no budget in here to buy a new car. This doesn't include buying a new car in 10 years when you put 200,000 miles on this car. Good, 300,000. 20 years at 14,000 miles a year would be 300,000 miles. Good luck. You better hope you started off with a brand new car. And a really good one. So you tell me. You show me how a person can survive on less than this without using welfare or cheat codes. No welfare, no cheat codes, no sugar daddies or sugar mamas. You have to earn enough money from one single 40-hour-a-week job to pay for this minimum Spartan survival shit-ass life. About the only thing you could do is, well, maybe you can go to the mall and hang out with your friends. You can't buy any food in the food court, but you can hang out with your friends if it's local enough. Maybe one of them will pick you up and take you. Okay? You better hope you're entertaining because that's going to annoy them, you leeching off them like that. Okay? You tell me. You show me. I brought receipts. You look up and verify any of these numbers you want. Go ahead, look them up. You show me with hard numbers that apply to 50% of the people where you want to live. So wherever you say you can get your rent price, you have to have enough of those rents available for 50% of the population of that area. I'm going to look it up. You tell me, well, I'm paying, $800 for rent in Miami. I'm going to look up the population of Miami, and I'm going to try to find that many rents at that price for that many people for 50% of the population. So no bullshit. I'm not looking for exceptions. There's always exceptions. There's always exceptions. So, how does the business survive? Now we know what minimum survival wage is. Now we know what the base cost of labor is. If you want to buy a bottle cap, it starts at a nickel plus my profit. If you want to buy an employee's labor, it starts at $21 an hour plus profit. Which means the minimum wage should be $21 an hour. Because there is no place in the entire country where you can survive on less than that without cheat codes or assistance. If you don't have cheat codes and you don't have assistance, the only way you can survive on less than $21 an hour is to cut something from that list. And that's a cheat code. Because you heard my list, there's nothing in there. That's bare subsistence survival. I mean, I have everything LED and I keep everything turned off. I wash clothes once every 2 weeks. Okay, I super pack that washing machine. It's not the greatest for cleanliness, but it works. I have a heat pump that's half the size rated for this house. All right, and my electric bill's $150 a month. My water bill's $30 a month. My phone bill's $20. That's $200. Trash? I don't get trash service. I gotta drive my car 12 miles to the transfer station and take my trash there. Thankfully, I have an electric car, because otherwise I'd be screwed because I don't have the gas for that 24-mile round trip. I'm using massive cheat codes. I own this house, so my rent is $50 a month. That's my property taxes. Okay, that's a massive cheat code that allows me to survive on a lot less. But I had to come up with $47,000 to buy the house and $15,000 to almost $20,000 to repair it enough to make it livable, because it was an as-is, where-is, sight unseen. Okay, so you explain to me how you can survive on less than that. Before you say a burger flipper doesn't deserve $21 an hour, before you say a person cleaning out trash doesn't deserve $21 an hour, a janitor doesn't deserve $21 an hour, you tell me how they can survive on less. That's the cost of labor. You see, the problem is businesses figured out how to create a fourth option that's as old as time. It's called slavery. You see, employment has a critical problem. If you charge too much for this bottle cap, they'll just make their own bottle caps, or they'll reorganize their business to do without bottle caps. But you can't do that with labor, because the laborer has to either work or die. You can't live off the land. All the land is owned. Even taking an apple off the ground under a tree is theft. That tree belongs to somebody. You just stole their apple, okay? You can't even fish without paying for a permit, a license to fish. Oh, I'll go offshore and fish in the ocean. Well, ocean fishing's not a freedom anymore. You now need a permit to saltwater fish. If you go 12 miles offshore, you can fish for free, but you can't bring the fish back to shore. Otherwise, you still have to pay the permit. You still need the state's permission. So you'd have to go 12 miles offshore, catch the fish, eat the fish, then come back. Oh, but wait a minute. Your boat, even if you take a fallen log, which you stole, because that log belongs to somebody, you don't own land, therefore you can't own a log. You have to buy one, or you're taking one from somebody. But even if you do a dugout canoe from a log, where are you getting the tools? Yeah, that needs money too. You need a permit to put on the boat to go in the water. You're not allowed to put the boat in the water without a permit. You cannot survive on land. You have to own land to survive on land. Okay? There is no frontier anymore. All the land is owned. There is no unowned land in this country. So saying live off the land, you're an idiot. That requires you to own the land you're living on. So you have a choice. Work or die. Remember, no cheat codes, no assistance. So you can't count panhandling. That's getting assistance. That's a cheat code. Okay? You have to survive on your own income, your own revenue. That's $21 an hour. In the cheapest parts of the country. Only in the cheapest parts of the country. Anywhere else, it goes up. That's the basement. That's where it starts. Everywhere else, it's higher. You tell me how that's different, how that's wrong. So, when my base cost is a nickel, if you decide, well, I'm not paying you a nickel, well, then I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. You don't get bottle caps. But that's not how labor works. Because if I don't work, I die. Because if I don't work, I can't buy food. And if I can't buy food, I die. You can't say, well, get food out of the dumpster. That's a cheat code. No assistance, no cheat codes. Without food, you die. Therefore, without money, you die. Grow your own food. That requires land. You don't own any. So you can't grow your own food. You could try planting in a park, but number one, that's illegal. Number two, you'll die before you get your first harvest. And three, people are either going to trample it, tear it out, or steal it. Okay? You tell me. But businesses have figured out a way. It's called slavery. That's the fourth option. You make people do it. How do you make people work? Because the alternative is death. When we say, well, you can choose not to. No, you can't. You can't choose not to. You can technically make a choice not to. That's called suicide. Okay? But when we say you have a choice, that's not what we actually mean. What we actually mean is you have freedom of choice. You are free to choose. What is the litmus test for free to choose? Can you choose no without negative consequences? If you have the ability to say no without negative consequences, then you have freedom of choice. If you don't have the ability to say no, if what is being offered is mandatory, you have to have it, it's not freedom of choice. It's compulsory. That means work is involuntary. It is not voluntary. You do not have freedom of choice to work, in general, on average. There are always exceptions. Let me give you a perfect example. We meet in a dark alley. I put a gun to your head. I'm stronger than you, smarter than you, faster than you. I got the drop on you. Give me your wallet. Now, You technically do have a choice. You could say no, and before the word fuck you finishes coming out of your mouth, the bullet will be passing through your gray matter and splattering your brain on the brick wall behind you. And then I'm going to take your wallet and everything else you have. So you don't have freedom of choice. Because at the minimum, saying no is going to result in me busting your skull open with this gun if I don't shoot you with it. Okay? So you do not have freedom of choice. The decision is compulsory. You're going to say yes unless you're suicidal, and then you have a mental illness problem. You're going to say yes because you don't want to die for what's in your wallet. Same thing with work. It's compulsory. It's involuntary. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing, but it's also not a bad thing. It's like chaotic neutral, all right? It's not evil or bad that work is compulsory. It's the nature of a labor-based economy. When your economy is based on labor, you're going to have money, and when you have money, you're going to have to earn that money with labor. Whether it be producing a product or working at a store. Either which way, or doing what I do, produce content, okay? I'm working for this. Without that labor, you can't have money. So the two are interlinked. That's not a bad thing as long as it's managed properly. As long as people are paid fairly, then it's not a bad thing. You work, you get paid, you have a life. That's the way it is. Will we live long enough to see a post-need society? I don't know. Probably not. Highly doubtful. Our society is not socially ready for a post-need society. If an alien starship flew by and dropped replicators on Earth, and we could just make as many replicators as we wanted, and including power plants for our homes, so we never had to pay for anything ever again, it'd be World War III. Because if you have replicators, you've just rendered currency worthless. And you've just rendered labor worthless, and you've just rendered everything of value in our society worthless. What's the last thing left that's worth anything? Land. It's going to be World War III as all the big superpowers fight to claim as much land as they can. The United States would incorporate Canada and Mexico, and they would say yes because they want the protection of the United States, and they can't fight back. The United States would then move down into South America and steamroll the whole continent. We would own North and South America. It would be the new Confederate United States of America. And then we would probably, in my opinion, if I were the general, we'd go over to the southern tip of Africa and start working our way up until we bumped into China and Russia. Then we'd stop and hold the line there. Because you can bet your ass China and Russia would be fighting and moving down through Africa to claim as much as they could. Land would be the only thing worth anything, but you can't replicate another planet. Okay, it'd be World War III. Because you think these people are going to give up all their power? Because it's not money. Once you have, 7, 8, 9 figures, money ceases to have any value. When you have $100 million, that's a meaningless number. I could survive the rest of my life, both of us, on $600,000. If someone handed me 600 grand, I would never have to work another day for the rest of my life, and I would live pretty decently. I mean, I wouldn't be able to live luxuriously, but I'd live decently. That's $20,000 a year, even without accounting for interest. I could live very comfortably on $20,000 a year, mostly because I own my home. If you have to pay rent, you can't live on $20,000 a year. I can, because I have cheat codes. Okay? So $100 million? Jesus. 100 people, young people, could live the rest of their lives without having to work on just $100 million balance. $1 million for each person. You can live comfortably the rest of your life with $1 million in the bank. You probably wouldn't even have to touch the principal. You put that into bonds and say municipal bonds and stuff like that, which are tax free, by the way. In some places, you can make $20,000, $30,000 a year, maybe $40,000 a year, easy. If you don't have rent, if you already own your home, you're living nice. Okay, that's the hard part. It's getting to the point where you can buy the home. Once you have the home, it's a lot easier. Depending on what your other costs are. The reason more people struggle is because we tend to live with what we make. So if you make more, you spend more. But if you can control that and not do that, so once you have hundreds of millions of dollars, the money no longer means anything. It's now about prestige, wealth, and power. And that's what they're doing. They're exerting power. These people want to be lords, kings, and emperors. That's what they want. That's what they crave. That's what they desire. That's why they push for more and more wealth. They want a kingdom. They want an empire. They want a castle. That's what they want. They want power. And you threatening to destroy that with a replicator? Yeah, they would murder. They would murder 80% of the world if that's what it took to get them back to a system where they're in charge again. They wouldn't even hesitate. I mean, the crack dealer will kill you for $20. You think Bezos won't put a strikeout on you for $1 trillion? he wouldn't even think twice about it. Hell, after he ordered you dead, he would forget about you. Oh, I took care of that person. What person? That's how irrelevant it would be to the person like that. For that kind of money? Yeah. No hesitation. They wouldn't even do it. They wouldn't even say, go kill that person. They would just put into place systems that would result in that. And they wouldn't care. Collateral damage. Okay? So yeah, the society has to evolve with that technology. But minimum survival wage 2 years ago was $21 an hour. Which means nobody in the country should be permitted to pay anybody less than $21 an hour. If you pay less than $21 an hour, you're a slave, not an employee. Okay? Which means everybody's a slave because everybody's being underpaid because everybody's wage is based off minimum wage. If the person making minimum wage is being paid almost a third of what they should be, no, it is a third. It is a third. $7.25. So federal minimum wage is 1/3 of minimum survival wage. 1/4 of a living wage. And that doesn't even account for the fact that tipped employees are allowed to get paid $2.13 an hour. And you wonder why restaurants can't find waitresses anymore? Because nobody's tipping. Nobody can afford to. And yet they're still paying $2.13 an hour. Technically, if you make less than $7.25, they're supposed to pay the difference. They don't. And there's nothing you can do about it. Or the government just straight up helps them by not allowing you to account for costs that are actual costs. When I worked at Papa John's, my effective income was $3.56 an hour. When you factored in the cost of using my own car, because the mileage they paid you was a fraction of what it actually cost. It didn't even cover gas. Not even gas. Yeah, that's why the churn rate is so bad for a pizza delivery. I did that job for 5 years. I had an electric car, and I was pretty good at doing it, so I was able to make it work. And my average tip was $3. My average. And eventually my boss told me to stop talking about what I made in tips because I made unusually good tips compared to a lot of people and it was upsetting people. I averaged $3. I had an app. I tracked everything. Every single expense, every single mile driven, right down to 1/10 of a mile. Every single penny I spent. I tracked everything. Yeah, it's... And then the government stopped letting us account for our mileage. I just did it anyway. You're not going to tell me not to account for a cost that they're not paying. On the one hand, the law says that cost belongs to the business, and then you're saying I'm not allowed to deduct it. Fuck you. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you got people saying people don't deserve $21 an hour. They're owed $21 an hour. Forget about deserve. That's the minimum. I showed you the receipts. Look it up yourself if you don't believe me. The minimum's 21. And that was 2 years ago. Prove me wrong. But remember, you have to use averages. It has to account for 50% of the population of whatever area you want to live in. You cannot use assistance. You cannot use cheat codes. One job. No more than 40 hours a week. Because back in 1950, 60s, 70s, dad would go to work 9 to 5, one job, 40 hours a week, and pay for a home, school, car, vacation for mom and the 2.4 kids on one job. Yeah. In, I believe in 1980, this is how I figured out median per capita income for 1980. In 1980, a white male above the age of 14 willing to work 40 hours a week could expect to make between $21,000 and $38,000 a year. Now, why did I give that kind of a weird description? Because back then, black people made 50 to 75% of what white people made. Women made 25 to 50% of what white people made. And people didn't have to work full time back then because we actually got paid living wages. Why do you think times were so good then? Even when you were poor, times weren't that bad. Okay? Because wages were actually decent. You got to remember, you have to adjust these numbers for inflation to what they actually were relative to your expenses. Sure, the wage was, a fifth of what it is today, but so were the expenses. That's why you have to adjust for inflation. I paid $4,500 cash for 1988 Jeep Cherokee in 1996, and I got 24 miles a gallon in that thing. I put 31-inch tires, a 4-inch lift kit, skid plates. I didn't do any hardcore four-wheeling because it was my daily driver, and I was relatively poor. But my dad gave me the $1,500 to put down, which I paid back, and then I made the payments. $100 a week he let me pay. We bought a bunch of cars from him over time. He was a good guy. Delsey Auto in South Jersey. But he's a good guy. But I could afford it. Today, that'd be hard. That'd be hard today. I'm glad I have 3 cars because if I didn't, I'd be in trouble. At least if one breaks, I can just switch to another one until I can afford to fix the other one. And my insurance is cheap, registration is cheap. I pay $600 a year for insurance. I pay $150 every 2 years for registration for both cars. The pickup truck I have deactivated. Well, I could just pay it and activate it if I have to. But I'm probably going to sell it because I don't really need it. It's nice to have, but I have no money to buy things to use the pickup truck to go get. And I can't. Hell, even free stuff I can't do because I can't afford the gas. Out here, everything's far away. Albuquerque's a 50-mile round trip just to touch Albuquerque, just to get to the city limits of Albuquerque. 50 miles round trip. Your average trip into Albuquerque is 60 or 70 miles round trip. It gets expensive. When my car was working properly, it was electric. It only cost me $3 to fill the battery. But now the battery's bad. Not because it wore out, but because it was defective from the manufacturer and Nissan refuses to warranty it. That's a corporate warranty issue, not a battery issue. It's a very rare niche problem. A couple of the cells in the battery are undervolting, which causes the BMS to kick in the safety protocols, and so I only get like 40 miles range. But that's like Kia refusing to warranty the engines that were blowing up. That's not a problem with gas engines. That's a problem with Kia honoring their warranty. This is not a problem with electric cars. This is a problem with Nissan honoring their warranty. You tell me. Prove me wrong. Show me numbers that are different. But remember, you have to include everything on that list. You're not allowed to remove anything. That's a cheat code. You're allowed to start with a good car, start with a good phone, paid off, paid for. Okay? You're allowed to make the assumption that you won't have any major car repairs or major health issues. We're going to allow those cheat codes. I'm giving you a lot of benefits here. Okay? You try to find me a better deal than that. But you can't cherry pick. You can't go on, Facebook Marketplace. Where's that phone? Where the hell is that thing? I literally just had it. Oh, I dropped it. Okay. Facebook. And let's go to Marketplace. Room rent. So if I do a search for room for rent, 600, 600. Oh, here's a 450 in Edgewood. Wow. Oh, it's a tiny room. It's like one little room. It's like an efficiency. Tinier. 700, 800. Here's a 450. Basically, they're sharing a house. 700, 780, 765, 800, 600. So 600 is about the lowest you can rent a room for. But there's... Seeing how many. There's maybe 300. Probably less. Let's say there's 300. That includes Albuquerque. Okay? Let's say there's 300 available. There's 667,000 people in Albuquerque. Sorry. You got to use the number that applies to 300,000 people. Median rent, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Here are the top search results.
$1,366. So that's what you'd have to use for rent. Well, now you need $23 an hour. How much is that? That is 1366 minus 1098. That's a delta of 268 times 12 for a delta of 3,216 divided by 2,000, which is a full-time work year. That's $1.60. So you need to make $22.60 an hour. And that's assuming none of those other numbers have gone higher. So in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the surrounding area around Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is one of the poorest places in the country, mind you. Okay? It's one of the cheapest places you can live. That's why I moved here. You need to make $23 an hour. Minimum. Which means New Mexico's state minimum wage should be 23. It's 12. It's half what it needs to be. And that's not for a living wage. That's a survival wage. That's no luxuries. I think they did make public transport free here for low income. So you can move around the city relatively affordably. So you'd be able to do like free activities if any are available. So you'd have some entertainment. And it's probably dense enough you could probably, bum Wi-Fi off a neighbor. If you get goody with them, cook them some decent food or cookies or something like that, and ask to borrow their Wi-Fi, then don't abuse it. So you can maybe get by on $23 an hour. It's doable. Now that's one place where you could enact a cheat code. You might be able to use public transportation to go to work, maybe, depending on where you live. If you live outside the city, no, there is no public transportation. If you manage to find a $1,400 apartment in the city, then you might be able to use public transportation, but you're still going to pay roughly the same amount because your other expenses are going to go up. You're going to wear through shoes and socks faster. Shoes are expensive. And sure you could buy $20 shoes from Walmart and they'll last about a month. And there's a reason why car ownership is 92% in this state, because everything's far away. You need a car. And show me how I'm wrong. What that tells me is base cost of labor is $23 an hour. Maybe it's cheaper in Louisiana. It's possible. But as far as I could tell, nationally, 21 is the cheapest. And that was 2 years ago. So 23 sounds about right for 2 years. It's probably closer to 25. People are saying, well, we're pushing for $15. No, we're not. We were pushing for $15 20 years ago. $15 an hour is where minimum wage needed to be 20 years ago. Okay? You want to see what wages are actually worth today? Stop figuring out how much things cost and figure out how much they're actually worth. Okay? So, for example, this phone, it's actually very affordable. This phone was $200. I love my Neytiri. This phone was $200. At a $23 an hour minimum wage, that's 8 hours of work to buy this phone, not counting taxes. So that's 10 hours of work to buy this phone. At minimum wage, $7 an hour, okay, that's 30 hours plus the tax differential, 6 more. That's 36 hours of work. One whole week to buy a phone. You only have 52 weeks in a year. So at minimum wage today, you would have to work one whole week to pay for a $200 phone. That's a cheap phone. That's what you should start thinking about things in. All of a sudden, usually the only people who are complaining are people who think it's conservatives versus liberals, so I got to get the libtards, even though there are no liberals left in the country. They're all Republicans now. There's basically no liberals left, and that's why we're having problems. Everybody's conservatives. You have light Republicans and heavy Republicans now. But, or people who make more money and think you don't deserve it because I'm not getting paid more. Because they're too stupid to realize that them getting paid more means you get paid more. They've artificially kept wages low. They've artificially kept prices low. And that allowed them to people to still afford it and not realize how bad the wages were getting. Because it took 25 years to do it, 45 years to do it. But that also allowed them to just pocket the profit. But now it's catching up to them. Now prices are going up faster than wages can keep up. To the point where we're reaching that tipping point. Where people are going, what the fuck? I can't even afford to go to McDonald's. What the fuck? A fucking Big Mac meal is $12? Are you kidding me? 10 or 12 bucks now? Yeah, it's like 12 bucks. It's only like 10 or 11 if you get the small fries. As soon as you get large fry, large drink, you're like 12, 13 bucks. And people are realizing, I gotta work 2 hours to pay for this fucking meal. What the fuck? And now they don't know what to do about it. They don't want to give up their profit. And a lot of businesses, if we correct the wage situation, a lot of businesses are going to go out of business. And that needed to happen. We expanded too thin because we had slave labor. Slave labor allowed these corporations to open up way more businesses than they should have been able to. They took something that was economically non-viable and they made it viable with slavery. And of course they threw a temper tantrum when, 2 million people died, which upset the labor market. All of a sudden people did, in fact, have the option to say no. Nobody wants to work. No, they just don't want to work for you. And because so many people died, there's available jobs now. So they tried to shrink the job market. Yeah, corporate America tried to artificially shrink the job market, and they partially succeeded. That's why you don't see places open 24 hours anymore. That's why you see businesses being run on skeleton crews. They're trying to artificially suppress the job market. Because when there are more people than jobs, they can suppress wages. When there are more jobs than people, people can push wages up. That's called supply and demand, which should not affect the base wage. The base wage should be $23 an hour. The supply and demand should only affect the delta between 23 and whatever you're getting paid. When there's a glut of employees, you get closer to 23. When there's a glut of jobs, you get better than 23. But you should never go below 23. Just like you can't go below a nickel for the bottle cap. No matter what supply and demand does, you can't go below a nickel. If you're telling me the market will not support a nickel for a bottle cap, well, guess what? The market gets no bottle caps. I close up my factory, I take my capital, and I go home, and I go into a more equitable business. You don't still get the bottle caps because they cost a fucking nickel to make. But you can do that with people because it's okay if they die. Because nowhere on your death certificate does it say cause of death, poverty. Even though that's what killed them. Poverty is what killed them, but that's not what the death certificate says. So we can delude ourselves and pretend that wasn't what did it. You wonder why life expectancy is actually... The United States is the only country in the world where life expectancy is going down. Infant mortality is... I think infant mortality is going up. I'll have to check that. It might not yet. But, yeah. Minimum wage, federal minimum wage, should be $23 an hour, and it should be adjusted state by state and location by location. So, for example, the mandatory minimum wage in New York should be a lot higher than $23 an hour. Same with California, stuff like that. We need to switch our taxation system to an indirect tax system. You could dramatically lower the minimum wage. In fact, I have a system that would allow a $12 to $14 minimum wage work. First, universal health care across the board. Healthcare is absolutely free across the board. It's 100% tax funded. So, you're paying for it, but you're paying for it via taxes, not directly. No co-pays, no, visiting fees, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Doctor wants to see you, free. You need a prescription, free. No cost. Pays for it, taxes. It'll actually increase our GDP, not lower it. It'll actually increase the revenue of the whole country. It'll decrease the revenue of these corporations, the pharmaceuticals, but the country will benefit. Because we pay more per capita for healthcare than any other country in the world except Finland. And we don't have universal healthcare. Okay, so that's the first thing, universal healthcare. The second thing you do is you eliminate property taxes on residences. No more property taxes. Yes, that means you're going to have to raise other taxes. I don't care. I don't get a vote in property taxes. I do get a vote in the other taxes. You eliminate property taxes. You own your home, you own your home. That's it. Okay? No more, put more restraints on utility companies. No more utility bills with 100 different charges. You are allowed to charge exactly one amount. X number of money per kilowatt hour. The water company is not allowed to put a single penny of a fee. No taxes, no surcharges, no service fees, nothing. You charge X number of cents per gallon. That's it. But you build it into the price. You build it into the fucking price like you're supposed to. Okay? Same thing with electricity. You're allowed to charge X number of cents per kilowatt hour. You are not allowed to charge any fee for anything else. Nothing. No late fees, no nothing. No fees. None. Cents per kilowatt hour. That's it. You build everything else into the cost of your service, like you're supposed to. The death of 1,000 cuts. Okay? We need to start migrating away from charging for government services. Your driver's license should have no cost associated to it. Your car registration should have no cost or one-time cost. Car registration should be permanent, unless it changes hands. And then you charge a cost fee. Just what it costs. That's it. Other fees are okay. As much as I hate it, I'm actually okay with pet fees because that helps pay for the local pound. I'm okay with hunting permit fees because that pays for game and wildlife. That money actually stays there. It doesn't go to the general fund. It actually pays for that. I'm okay with that kind of a thing. But that stuff needs to go away. It needs to be built into our taxes. No more Medicare tax, no more Social Security tax, no more income tax for wages, because that's net zero income. Okay, you tax the businesses only. They build that into the cost of the products. They're not allowed to tack it on. No sales tax, no VAT, no value-added tax tacked on at the register. Nope, it's built into the price of the product. Right, and then you pay the taxes. Does that mean the prices are going to go up? Oh yeah. This $200 phone might become a $300 phone. Your $1,200 iPhone might become a $1,500 iPhone. But you'll get to keep 100% of your income, and you can choose not to buy that. Okay? No more tacked on fees. You stop all that. Indirect taxation only. No direct taxation. That's how you start fixing this. Do something with car insurance. I would make liability car insurance illegal. You just end the concept of liability car insurance. Everybody pays $100 a year for a driver's license. Every year you pay $100. That covers your liability car insurance. Everybody is no fault liability only. If you want more coverage, that you can go to the private market for. And now, since it's optional and it's a free market, capitalism kicks in and we actually get fair prices. At first, it'll be inflated as they try to buck the system and try to, throw a temper tantrum because they want their profit. But eventually, a capitalist will realize there's room to make money here, and they'll move in and do their job. Okay? You do that, so no more paying for health care, no more property taxes, no more car insurance. It's $100 a year that you pay the government, and the United States covers liability insurance. That would allow us to have. The other thing. This is why one of the reasons why property taxes is so important. You have all these bullshit zoning rules and regulations. And the purpose of those zoning rules and regulations is to force you to make your property more valuable so they can tax you more. Because they want valuable properties, since how much they can collect from you for property taxes is based on the value of the property. That's why our previous mayor that we got out of here, that's why he was trying to make manufactured homes illegal. Because you can't tax them as highly. The last affordable owned home you can have in this country, trying to make it illegal. The tiny home movement found out the hard way. They built these tiny homes and found out it's illegal. You can't park the damn thing anywhere because they know you're living in it. It's illegal because they don't want you to skate on those taxes. They want their tax revenue. And so they make any way of saving on taxes illegal. If we got rid of property taxes and school taxes, eliminate them. You pay for them from the general fund. They still have to be paid for. You just do it a different way. You just collect the taxes from a different source. That's all. That's why I said, like, this $200 phone would become a $300 phone. That $1,200 iPhone would become a $1,500 iPhone. That $8 Big Mac meal might become a $10 Big Mac meal. Okay, this, $4 screwdriver might become a $6 screwdriver. Things like that. Okay? The dollar store might have to raise its price another 10 cents. Whatever it takes. But the point is, you have control now. You have a seat at the table. You still have to pay the taxes. The only people who pay taxes are people who cannot pass the tax on to someone else as a cost. I'm a business owner. I do not pay business taxes. None. Zero. You do. I charge you the taxes. It's built into the price. It comes from my profit, from my revenue. I don't pay the tax. I have to pay personal taxes. But I don't pay business taxes. No business pays business taxes. But if I can pass the cost on to the consumer and not pay the tax, that's just profit. That's why they like when the government taxes us directly. Because they still get to charge the same amount and keep the extra as profit now. That normally would have had to go toward taxes. Because they can't just take 100% of their tax and pass it on to the customer. Customers will buy less. They will actually be able to vote with their wallet. Vote with their feet. And so they're going to have to compromise. They're going to have to reduce their profit a little bit. Or even if they don't, even if they pass 100% of the tax on, the other business down the street is going to realize, I could take 10% less profit but increase my sales 20%. I'll make 10% more. That's probably not exactly right, but you get my idea. I could take a little less, and if the increase in sales is greater than the amount that I lost by taking less, I win. And you'll see a race to the bottom. Now, then you'll see places making cheaper crap to try to increase their margins. Well, people will stop buying the cheaper crap and they'll buy the slightly better crap. Again, it's self-balancing if it's done right. If you maintain a free market, it's self-balancing. We know it can work. We did it for 30 years. We tried capitalism for 30 years from 1950 to 1980, and it worked wonderfully. And then we killed it and went back to feudalism because it's more profitable. They saw all the money sitting on the table and they weren't happy. Yeah, Reagan put the final death nail in capitalism. He murdered it dead. But that's how you do it. You do that, and then I would also like to see a government program for building homes. I can show you how to build a house in that kind of a system that I just described. I can show you how to build a house for $30,000. You have Congress, who is the one who's supposed to control our money, a congressional bank, and they issue you a loan for $30,000 at 10% interest. Actual, not APR. 10% actual. So your grand total loan will be $33,000. $30,000 loan, $3,000 interest, fixed, not an APR. Your loan payment will be almost a third of what rent is today. And you'll pay it off in 5 years. Okay? Rent is just another form of slavery. Rent is not supposed to work the way it does. The rental economy that exists shouldn't exist. It only exists because it's a form of slavery. Rent should be for people who are mobile salesmen moving from place to place, soldiers who have to live here for a few years and there for a few years. That's what rent's for. Rent is not supposed to be for people to live in forever. It doesn't make any sense. Landlords are leeches on the economy. They're taking from the economy instead of adding to it. I mean, when a person rents, they're paying for the mortgage, they're paying for the taxes, they're paying for the upkeep, they're paying for the maintenance, they're paying for the upgrades and the utilities and the landlord's profit. They're buying the house for the landlord and paying for his profit. You should not be allowed to rent out a house unless it's fully paid off. If you have a note on the house, not allowed to rent it. Because you're a leech. You harm society. You don't provide a service. You take from society. But they provide a place where people leave. No. They're taking places away from people to live in and then giving it back at an inflated price. That's not providing a place to live. That's taking places to live away from people. Okay? And these $30,000 homes, you build them out of shipping containers. 2 shipping containers is 660 square feet. It's bigger than most apartments. And it's a home. You'll own it. Maybe add another, I don't know, $5,000 for a third shipping container if you want 900 square feet. Another 1 year on a loan. Okay, so a 6-year loan instead of a 5-year. You'd have to start down south in the drier climates like out west here, and figure out, once you get the economy of scale built up, you can start moving into more problematic climates. I can even see automating this stuff. It would create an enormous number of jobs. And you do it factory style on the road. You buy up land, you roll concrete trucks in, lay down the road, lay down the foundations, no asphalt, you do all concrete. And you lay down foundations, then the next set of trucks come in, drops containers. You could prefab them, create a factory line to prefab these things. And everybody will get exactly the same stuff. You're all going to have the same dishwasher, the same sink, the same light fixtures, the same layouts, the same heat pump, air and heat. A $400 Whirlpool heat pump. I'm sorry, $900 installed. You can get them for $400 now if you self-install. But I paid $900 for that Whirlpool heat pump, and I need about 2 of those to heat this house properly. But a double shipping container, foam insulated, that thing would easily heat and cool that anywhere, except extreme north. It costs like $50 a month to run that thing. Cheap. But everything will be identical. Everything will be the same. You'll have the same appliances, the same furniture, everything exactly the same. Oh, I don't want to live in a cookie cutter house. Okay, keep renting, asshole. Keep renting, you moron. Keep paying $1,400 a month to a landlord so they can own the house you're paying for. Idiot. So you buy one of these $30,000 house, you pay it off in 5 years. You're already saving money because the rent's going to be about a third of what rent currently is. Your mortgage payment's going to be about a third. What does that equal? Hang on. Maybe I'll make sure I'm doing the numbers right. 33,000 divided by 5 years, 6,600 divided by 12. That's $550 a month with interest. $550 a month. Rent is $1,366 a month. You want to keep paying $1,400 for basically the same thing that you'll never own, or do you want to pay $550 a month and you own it? And in 5 years, your payment drops to 0 because we got rid of property taxes. See how that works? Now all of a sudden, even if you're making $12 an hour, not only could you afford that, Because what would that come to? Let's do the math. So your rent would go down to $550. So that's let's see, 1098 minus 550. That's a 548 delta times 12. That's a $6,576 delta. So that brings us down to minus 29,760, 23,184, 23,184. And now we are also going to eliminate healthcare, okay? Because that's going to be built in. I need 2 phones for this. I got a tablet. Told you it's going to be a long video. Okay. So 456 times 12. That's 5472 minus 5472. That's 17,712. $150 a month for car insurance. Don't need that anymore. 150 times 12 is $1,800 minus the $100 a year you're going to pay for your license now. That's a delta of $800 minus $800. $16,912 is now what you need to make per year. Now, 16912 divided by 8 times 10. This gets us our pre-tax amount, $21,140 a year, divided by 2,000, $10.57. Now, minimum survival income. Now, your stuff is going to get more expensive. That's why I'm saying $12 to $14 an hour. But you're not going to be buying a whole lot of stuff. Remember, no taxes on necessities of life. So food's not going to go up. Your basic needs, things like t-shirts and basic shirts and socks and underwear and soap and stuff like that, no taxes on that. None. Zero. No taxes on necessities of life. If a person needs something to survive, you can't tax it. Okay? So you need about $12 an hour. We can basically leave minimum wage where it is now in most states and raise the national minimum wage to $12 an hour. And then you legislate it so that minimum wage is automatically, with no input necessary from Congress, attached to inflation, adjusted quarterly. Every quarter, if inflation goes up, you raise the minimum wage to match the inflation. If inflation goes down, you keep the wage the same. If there's a massive deflation event, you might need to adjust something, maybe. That could be a congressional action. But you make it automatic so they can no longer hold things like that, like Social Security minimum wage, over your head to get your vote for the pork bills. You take it out of Congress's hand once it's passed. It now becomes the law of the land. It's automatic. Congress does not have to approve it. If inflation goes up 3%, minimum wage goes up 3%. And you calculate inflation and cost of living correctly, not using 1960s values, which is what they're doing. Okay? So doing that, and that would actually save the country money. I mean, sure, the billionaires and the pharmaceutical companies would be out of business, and in the poorhouse, they'd have to actually get a job. Oh my God. Who would have thought? They'd have to actually get a productive job instead of murdering people for profit. But the country as a whole would gain because our medical costs would drop precipitously. Okay? You could make minimum wage $12 an hour with my system. And that would be survival wage. $14-15 an hour would be a living wage. I mean, sure, you know, poor people wouldn't have luxuries, but they're poor people. I mean, you know, you keep the de minimis at $800, and us poor people can buy our cool stuff from China. If Walmart orders from China, tariff the fuck out of them. Fuck you. Make it here. If you think there's demand for that product at that price, make it here. Open a factory, bring good jobs here, make it here. That's what tariffs are for. Tariffs aren't to punish the Chinese seller selling to Chris Taylor or you. That's not what tariffs are for. Tariffs are to prevent Walmart and Amazon from profiting from China on your back with your job. That's what tariffs are for. I should be able to buy this for $5.80 from China. That should be possible. Walmart should not be able to. Now, this gets complicated, but this is what the government's job is, okay? You get rid of the IRS and use them for this instead. they're used to calculating all these numbers. Well, now put them to work doing something useful. All right? We figure out approximately what it would cost to make one of these here in the U.S. Paying a factory worker, $18 an hour. Because factory workers are supposed to be good paying jobs. Okay? Remember, in my system, where the minimum wage is $12 and a living wage is $14, $15 an hour. So you figure out, okay, paying factory workers $18 an hour, what would it cost us to open a factory here in the U.S. and make this here? And then you figure out what's the delta between the $5.80 it costs Walmart to get this from China. They probably get it for less. They're probably paying $2 or $3 a piece for these, if not less. You'd be blown away by how much the profit margin is. If the delta is higher, or whatever the delta is between what it cost them and what it would cost them to make it here, that's how much you charge the tariff. That's what tariffs are for. Tariffs are to prevent corporations from cannibalizing labor here to take advantage of a different economic cost of living there. That's what tariffs are for. It's not to go after Temu. It's not to go after AliExpress. That's just two people doing business. Okay? The purpose of tariffs is to stop Walmart from costing us jobs here by taking advantage of cheap labor there. That's what tariffs are for. Tariffs are supposed to say, well, you're going to pay the same amount whether you build it here or you build it there, because we're going to tax you the difference. So you might as well build it here. And then everybody wins. All of a sudden, wages start going up because we have a production economy and not simply a service slave economy. But now they can't have, $300 million salaries. Or open up 20 McDonald's in one town. Not really. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. Okay? That's how you fix this. That's how you fix it. And you can use UBI to help with that as well. If economic efficiencies actually do reduce the labor need, then you create UBI. And you tax corporations to pay for the UBI. You say, okay, we're gonna give everybody, I don't know. Well, the amount I came up with, $10.57. UBI is $10.57. Everybody gets $10.57. Simple as that. You work and make more, you make more. And you still get the UBI. Now suddenly, you only have to work 20 hours a week. That's what efficiencies and economies of scale are supposed to do. You should be getting paid more for working less because the system's more efficient and you're more productive. That's what it should be doing. But it's not what it's doing. All you have to do is look at the profits of these corporations. It's not what it's doing. It's just putting money in their pockets. They're just fleecing the whole country. Use your brain. This is not liberal bullshit. I'm a fucking Republican. But I'm what they call a rhino. Republican in name only. I had to look that up. A guy called me a rhino. I was like, what? I know he's trying to insult me, but what's a rhino mean? It means RINO. Republican in name only. I'm what Republicans were 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Before Reagan and shit. Okay? I haven't changed. I'm still a Republican, as I've always been. What is a Republican has changed to this MAGA shit. Make America great again for the 0.1%. That's about it. So if you're Bezos or Elon Musk, yeah, America's great again. And get me wrong, I don't blame Elon Musk for getting all buddy-buddy with Trump. Elon Musk is doing what he needs to do to survive. He's doing what he needs to do to keep SpaceX and Tesla going. Like it or not, hate it or not, that's his job. And if Trump is going to give him what he needs to be more profitable, I don't blame him for supporting Trump. I blame Trump for doing what he does, but I don't blame, Musk for siding with the politician who's going to benefit him. I don't blame him for that. It's kind of slimy, but it's the right choice. Are you going to purposely take the worst choice that results in you making less money? No. Just use your head. Stop playing the hater game. Use your head. Do what's best for the country. Do what's best for everybody in general. It's not socialist. It's not communist. It's not Star Trek Utopia. First of all, socialism and capitalism are basically the same thing. You don't believe me? Look it up. Look up the definition of capitalism and look up the definition of socialism. They're basically identical. The only difference between capitalism and socialism is a system for profit where private individuals own the means of production for profit, or systems of production where the state owns the means of production for profit. That's the only difference. Whether the private people own it or the state owns it. That's the difference. That's the only difference between socialism and capitalism. They're variations of the same thing. I personally prefer capitalism. What we have now is not capitalism. It's feudalism. Look up the definition of feudalism. Might as well. We're at 2 fucking hours. Definition, feudalism.
Here's the definition of feudalism.
Oh, stop talking.
The dominant social...
Stop talking. Just the dominant social system in medieval Europe in which the nobility held lands from the crown in exchange for military service, and vassals were in turn tenants of the nobles, while the peasants, villeins or serfs, were obliged to live on their lord's land and give him homage, labor, and a share of the produce, notionally in exchange for military protection. Well, that's not what we have. We're not medieval. We don't have lords. You're a fucking idiot. Adjust the goddamn concepts to modern equivalents. The crown is the state. You could even say it's the federal government or it's the corporate state. Okay? So the state is the crown. The nobility held lands is the 0.1%. All the wealthy of the wealth. The people who own capital. Okay? Those are the nobility held from the crown in exchange for military service. Except instead of military service, we have tax service. Okay? And vassals were in turn tenants of the nobles. These would be the underlings, your C-class corporate entities, and your business owners. They would be the vassals. And then the serf is the employees. You're living on the Lord's land because the state and counties own the land in lieu of the United States. Okay, it's just a matter of degree here. It's the same exact thing, you're just changing what it's called. It's the exact same thing. You're just changing the label. You're taking your little eraser and going, and you're white out, and you're just writing a different name in. Nothing else changes. Okay? And you give homage, labor, and a share of produce. Well, you work for them, you pay taxes to them. It's feudalism. Literally, it's right there in black and white. What we have is feudalism, not capitalism. You want to see capitalism? Type Temu.com or AliExpress.com. That's capitalism. It's the dregs of capitalism, but it's capitalism. China hates it because they're a socialist dictatorship. So the Chinese government, hey, they're not communist. There's no such thing as a communist China. Communism doesn't exist. It's a 1950s red state boogeyman created by the United States. There's no such thing as communism in reality. It's a theoretical concept created by Karl Marx. But it would require a fundamental alteration of human psychology to exist. You'd have to be the equivalent of Borg drones. If you were to create a country and you were to set it up to be communist, and everything was like the Truman Show starting up in the morning, okay? So all the actors are in place. Truman hasn't woken up yet, and the director says, okay, counting down to sun up in 3, 2, 1, and you push the go button. Before you finished depressing the go button, your communist perfect state would cease to be communist. And it would become a dictatorship or a feudal system or something else, it would not be communist. 0.001 seconds after you initiated the go sequence, it would cease to be communism. Because communism is fundamentally incompatible with human psychology. It's not the way we work. It's the way ants work. It's the way bees work. It's not the way individuals work. And individuals would begin to immediately twist and distort the system in their favor. And that's not communism. Communism doesn't exist. It never has. Russia was never communist. Vietnam was never communist. Korea was never communist. China was never communist. And none of them ever will be. Not in your lifetime, not in your kids' lifetime, not in their kids' lifetime. It would take tens of thousands of years of altering human psychology to get to a point where we could possibly think about communism. It doesn't exist. It's a fairy tale. Anytime you hear somebody say communism, don't do it, but think about it. Just think about going, fuck, idiot. There's no such thing as communism. What are we supposed to be? We're a feudalist nation. We're an imperialist, feudalist nation. That's what we are. We're supposed to be a constitutional republic. What is a constitutional republic? A constitutional republic is a melting pot. You need a little bit of democracy, a little bit of anarchy, a little bit of totalitarianism, a little bit of capitalism, and a little bit of socialism. Well, we can't have socialism. You can't exist without socialism. What are you going to do? Start up a town and have 5 different police forces, and you'll have 911, 912, 913, 914, 915, and you'll call whichever fire department or police department you want. What are you going to do? Run 10 water lines and 10 power lines to every house so that you can have a competition of power companies? What are you going to do? Are you gonna stack our roads into a cake-like system so you can have 10 roads going down every street? So I want, Walmart.com's road today. Tomorrow I'm going to use Amazon's road. Are you fucking nuts? A society can't exist without socialist aspects. Anything where it's impractical to have competition. You can't have competition for infrastructure. Because it's not practical to have 10 sets of infrastructure. You make one power grid. You make one water grid. You make one sewer grid. That's socialist. It has to be. Look what happens every single time a public utility goes private. It gets more expensive. Every single time, no exceptions. Electric went private, more expensive. Water went private, more expensive. Sewer went private, more expensive. Telephone went private, more expensive. We went from paying $40 a month for telephone service to $137 a month for telephone service when they deregulated. Wow, that saved us a lot of money. You know what did get cheaper? Because there's competition. You only have to build towers. You don't have to run lines and pipes. So it's possible to have competition, which is why they're getting rid of it. They keep merging, and eventually there's going to be one cell phone provider, or maybe 2. We're basically at 2. You basically have T-Mobile and Verizon. It won't be long before the prices start going up. Get the cheap phone while you can. And then some things you need a little bit of democracy. We vote. You need a little bit of totalitarianism. We have a constitution that, in theory, is very difficult to change. There's very strict, high standards that have to be met to alter the constitution so that we can make sure we really want to do that. You really want to do that? I hear people saying we should get rid of the constitution and rewrite it. We're living in idiocracy with a nation full of fucking morons. There's 240 million eligible voters. And 160 million of them are so fucking stupid they voted for Trump and Biden. And the other 80 million were so unorganized and unintelligent in this regard that they didn't come together to beat the other 2. And you want to rewrite the founding document of the country with these people in charge? Oh my God. You'd be better off giving it to Walter White and saying, here, write a new constitution. Of course, if you're in that one group who thinks you can win, oh yeah, you want to. Turn this place into a shithole real quick. We tried capitalism. And the government did its job. It enforced capitalism. Do you know how it did that? One of the ways it did that was forcing anti-collusion and anti-competition laws, which we got rid of. You know, preventing one company from owning too much of one market, which we got rid of. How's that working for you? Walmart and Amazon own everything. How's that working for you? You got your minimum wage job at Walmart yet? How about that 150% churn rate at Amazon? Because they drive them like literal slaves. Oh, but they're getting paid $28 an hour, but they're doing $60 an hour's worth of work. And they're breaking their bodies doing it. That's why the churn rate's 150%. They can't get people to work the job anymore. It's because it's such a costly job at such a horrible wage. Oh, $29 hours is not horrible. It's the wage isn't what's horrible. It's the wage relative to what's expected of you. You want to pay me $29 an hour to work at McDonald's? Sure. You want to pay me $29 to work at an Amazon warehouse? Not on your fucking life. I'll start at $60, and it better come with permanent lifetime health benefits, because you're going to fuck my body up working that job. Oh my God. But we had, for example, one of the things beside the anti-collusion, anti-corruption, and anti-price gouging laws and all these other laws that we had for that thing, we also had a 93% top-tier tax rate. A lot of people don't understand what that means. Basically, in 1950, you'd have to make the equivalent of over $400,000 to touch the 93% tax rate. And the 93% only applies to the amount over $400,000. I'm adjusting for inflation. It doesn't apply to your whole entire amount. So, for example, on your first $12,000 in the United States, you pay 0. But that's not actually true. You actually pay 8%. Because you pay Medicare and Social Security tax on everything. And if you're self-employed, you pay 15.36%. Because you have to pay both halves. And that's on every dollar. Every single dollar. If you make $10, you owe the government 15%. You make $1,000, you owe the government $150. You only get the standard deduction on the W-2 1040 tax, which is the third federal income tax. There's 3. Federal income tax Social Security, federal income tax Medicare, and federal income tax base. Okay? You only get the standard deduction on this one. You only get to apply tax deductions on this one. You don't get to apply that to these 2. So when you see people saying, well, the lowest income earners don't pay any taxes, they're lying through their fucking teeth, because they're only counting this one. Even state taxes. In Pennsylvania, you pay 3.06%. Here, you pay like 4.5%. Wow, here's worse. No, it's not. Pennsylvania's way worse. Because in Pennsylvania, you pay 3.06% on every dollar you make. You make $20,000, you pay 3.06% on the whole $20,000. New Mexico, it's averaging around 4.5%. It's actually progressive, but it averages 4.5%, but they use the same standard deduction as the feds. So your first $12,000 is 0. If you make $20,000, you pay like 4.5%, but only on $8,000, not on the full $20,000. Okay, people don't understand this. The 93% top tier tax rate only applied on the amounts at that tax bracket. Do you know how many people paid the 93% tax rate? 0. We're very close to 0. Because I, as a business owner, over my dead body, am I handing 93% of my profit to the government? Spend, 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 baby. We're going to open up a new factory here. We're going to get new equipment and computers here. We're going to upgrade this facility. We're going to give people pensions and health care. We're going to give these guys who travel company cars. We're going to provide medical. We're going to provide dental. We're going to have parties and perks for the employees. We're going to, upgrade and modernize all of our facilities. We're going to open new locations. I'll spend that money any way I can on my own business and expanding my business before I give a penny of it to the government. And that was the fucking point. They were managing the free market, which is the job of the government, because corporations do not want a free market. They want a monopoly. They want to own the market. If you want a free market, you need someone with a stick as big as the corporation's stick to maintain it. And the only one that's available is the government. Because you ain't got a stick big enough. But the U.S. government does. And that's what they did. By instituting a 93% top-tier tax rate, they forced businesses to reinvest in their country and their community and their people and their products and their facilities, where everybody, including the business owner, benefits. When you get rid of that, you get what we have today. They hoard cash, and then only they benefit. You do all the work, they get all the benefit. There's no sharing there. That's what a 93% top-tier tax rate does. That's it. I'm done talking. Got any questions? Ask down below. If you say something that's stupid and you sound like a moron or an idiot, I'm going to call you a moron or an idiot. I'm tired of being nice to people. You are literally holding in your hand a fucking mobile supercomputer that makes you one of the most intelligent creatures in the known universe. I am one of the smartest motherfuckers in the known universe. Ask me any question. Anything. Ask me anything. And I can probably give you an answer. 2,416 divided by 0.0001.
2,416 divided by 0.001 is 2,416,000.
How many countries are there in the world?
195. According to BBC Science Focus, there are 195 recognized countries in...
What's the population of Alabama?
In 2023, the population of Alabama was 5,108,468.
I know pretty much everything mankind knows. All I have to do is push this button and ask this $200 little machine anything I want, and it will tell me. So there's no excuse. If you're a moron, either you're mentally retarded or you're willfully and intentionally a moron. If you're an idiot and know how to use one of these, well then you're willfully and intentionally an idiot. Because all you have to do is ask this fucking machine that 70% of the population has in their pocket anything you want. Now this one usually gets wrong because they've been editing the data. U.S. median per capita income.
Here is information from U.S. Census Bureau Quick Facts, United States.
Hey, it went up. They finally adjusted it. But you notice it didn't give me the answer. It says here is some information. And the first thing it gives you is median household. So they can deceive you and lie to you. I asked for median per capita. It's currently $43,289. Okay. Can I make that bigger? No, I can't. That is the estimated amount in the past 12 months in 2023 dollars. $43,289. That is median per capita income. What does median mean? You can ask it. It means if you take 100 people and you split them exactly in half, you arrange the people from poorest to wealthiest, and you split them right down the middle, the poorest 50 and the wealthiest 50. If you are right there at the middle, how much do you make? $43,289. Okay. What was median per capita income in 1980? Whatever household income was. Because the vast majority of families in 1980 were single income earner households. So median household is median per capita. Today it's not. The vast majority of households today are multi-earner income households. And that's why the numbers are deceptive. And that's why they always use household or family income. And they never use median per capita. Because God forbid if they told you the truth. God forbid. Can't have that. No. Can't have that. You'll scare the lemmings. Okay? So you have no excuse. You can ask this thing almost anything you want. And it will probably have the answer. I mean, if you ask them really oddball questions like, oh, I wonder if it knows this. Who was the author of the CADS series of books?
Aaron Hunter and Dan Jolly wrote Warriors.
It changed it to CATS. Hang on, let me change it to CADS. I figured it would do something like that. There it is. CADS series by John Sievert. Okay? The only reason it didn't come up with this is because it changed CADS to CATS. Which makes sense from a language point of view. Alright? Have you ever heard of that series of books? Apparently, I thought it was more than 8 books. I swear I had more than 8 books. I'm almost certain I had more than 8 books in that series. But apparently it's only 8. Yeah, there's 11. Okay. I thought there was more than that. I thought there was like 20 or so. I love that series of books. Really good series of books. It's one of those cheeky, 70s, 80s, whatever, 90s. I don't remember when it came out. Military sci-fi series. Gung Ho hero type series. Basically the guy's trying to get home to his family, but nuclear Armageddon starts. The world nukes itself. It's World War III. And this one elite group, they're trying to, rebuild the country, find their family and stuff like that. And they wear these mechanized, computer-aided design suits. Like mech suits, like primitive Iron Man type stuff, like Mark I Iron Man kind of things. Really, really cool. With a lot of the cliche early sci-fi military fiction crap. Like one time they got caught by these people who were mercenary wackos, and they were strung up in the barn like hogs and being force-fed a milk solution to try to fatten them up because they're cannibals and they're going to eat them. It's weird, crazy shit like that. But yeah, that's a niche thing, and it found that. Okay? So if you don't know something, and if you're disputing anything I'm saying, there's a 99.9% chance you're wrong. I'm not going to say 100% because scientists never say 100%, but you're probably wrong. And if you're going to tell me I'm wrong, bring receipts. And I don't want to hear no political propaganda receipts. I want data. Real data. And you're going to have to back it up. So, I vented enough. No one's going to watch this. No one.